Good morning from Vietnam, Dave. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon joining our inside sharings and share your stories with our audience. And on behalf of the listeners, I want to say thank you.
A pleasure to be with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Hey, Dave. Have you been to Vietnam before?
I have not. I've been to South Asia in different places, but not yet there.
Alrighty. So hope that in your bucket list now, in the future, you're gonna visit our country, and by then you have a new friend, new family. Our family will be, taking you around how you guys traveling here. All right.
That would be a pleasure. Look forward to it.
And in our culture, it's a great honor for our audience to have you to have introduced about who you are and the work that you do. Would you please do that first?
Sure. So, Dave Jennings, I am a leadership and change guy. I spend all my thinking time trying to help leaders figure out how to implement change, as well as helping leaders step into their next role.
Hmm.
And so, whatever I'm reading, whatever I'm thinking about, it's probably related something to leadership. And I've been at this now, boy, about 30 years, and it's something for me that's been rewarding throughout. Being able to meet with such amazing leaders from all over the world has just been a great experience.
Wow. Dave, allow us to examine your life a little bit because for that 30 years of great achievements, working with many people around the world, and then you introduce it in less than a minute. So we need to dive in deeper, all right?
So, okay, happy to. So, I like many people when you're young and you're starting out, you're like you don't know what you want,
Mm.
and I was not privileged with. I knew exactly what it was that I wanted to do, and so I tried different things. I actually started in the world of financial planning,
Ah.
and uh, and while I was working on that, we started doing seminars to help people understand their finances better. And I started doing these seminars, and I'm like, I enjoy this. And so, but it wasn't the right avenue. And then I went back to college and started focusing on leadership and how could I develop leaders. And so I got a kind of different kind of degree. I have a PhD in sports psychology.
Ah.
And I went to the sports psychology department. And I said, look, I'm never going to be the sports guy. I live in business, but I want to learn to think at the high levels.
Mm.
I want to understand how people perform at high levels. And so I convinced them that I could kind of do this split degree between organizational psychology and sports psychology and look at the way people excel across any kind of discipline. So that's what I did is I researched ways people, perform under pressure. I did research in change resilience. So my actual dissertation
Mm.
is how people can be more resilient, deal with stress, perform at high levels. And then went out and, started working in one company and another, and then finally worked in a Fortune 500, worked in Hewlett Packard, and then started my own company 25 years ago. And that was the scariest thing I ever did. I left. So Hewlett Packard at that time was my dream company.
Mm.
I always wanted to work in there. My dad had a Hewlett Packard calculator and had many of them, and they were the mark, and they were a great company. And to leave the company that I really, really had always wanted to be at and start my own thing was scary. But I started my own company, as I say, about uh, 20, 25 years ago, and it's just been a great adventure working with leaders across the world at Fortune 500s, Shark Tank winner, startups, and just all kinds of leaders. So it's been great.
Wow. So you start up as a financial planner, and at that, during that for a while, and then you realize that you really like the industry, and then you move back to school and learning about sports psychology. Why how did you realize that, okay, after a while of searching and, leadership development and organizational development is something that you love to do?
I was in one of the required classes. I can't say that I knew or I had the answer, but I was in one class, and it was a class called Motivation and Work Behavior. It was just one of the required classes in the org psych, and I was literally sitting there reading this book on how people are motivated, and I had that eureka moment of, oh, this is it. I love understanding what motivates us. And it was just, that was my aha moment. Now, I say moment, but I had already been through a bachelor's and a master's and worked. But finally, it was like, how do I bring all this together? And since then, that is what I have focused on: is how do you motivate yourself? How do you motivate others? How do you help people go through change? So for me, it was that moment, but I would argue that moment came after a lot of exploring, a lot of mistakes, maybe even dead ends, but I just kept on trying to find it.
Mm. And you say that there was some, when you worked at HP and then you decided to leave the organization and start the scary part, and that is starting your own organization. First, I want to congratulate you back then for starting the for doing that, because I have a lot of executive friends, and when by their retiring age, right, time, they said that the few things that they regret, and one of that is not to start their company when they were younger, and because they've been able to help organization to grow, to make the numbers, and to lead, with great results. So why not doing their own organization, their own company? And I always encourage them to. It's never late. You can always start now. Try to do something now.
Right.
So 25 years ago, you started your own company. Back then, there must be something in there inside of you to tell Dave that you need to, get all the comfortability aside, and then start a scary path, but it's a rewarding one. So tell us, how did you feel at that moment, though?
So actually, when I was doing my PhD, I had a career class. Not it was how to coach people in careers. It wasn't so much just what do you want to do. Is about coaching executives. And in there, as part of that, we had to create a plan. So I actually created a plan to start being a consultant on my own. But in my plan, I said I first want experience. I didn't want to just get out of college and do it. And that's not a right or wrong. There are absolutely people who can get out and jump in. I needed experience within a company. And so I planned out, and I worked in smaller firms, worked in larger firms. And every time I wanted to switch jobs, I'm like, okay, now's the time. I'm gonna start my own company. And every time is like something was missing inside. It was just I didn't feel like I had enough. And but then when I was at Hewlett Packard, I got the experiences, I got the connections as well. So it wasn't just about the knowledge. It was people I met, and people I met at Hewlett Packard, even inside and outside the company, are the way I launched my business. Those relationships were what were essential to doing it. I argue that I probably had the knowledge, maybe even before, but various people who believe in you, various people who introduce you to others, they help. Like one of the guys that used to sell to me, he would sell me consultants and training. When I was leaving Hewlett Packard, he said, Dave, I'm going to take you out to your last free lunch. All right. And I'm going to give you some advice. And he said, and so I'm like, okay, here we go. So we go out to lunch, and he said, okay, Dave, you ready? Here's the advice. Don't panic. I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, there will be days when you're running your own business that you're going to be scared to death. You're going to wonder how you're going to pull it off. You're going to be afraid. He said, don't panic. You're going to be okay. And I have used that many times because there's ups and downs in any business.
Mm.
And, I just go, okay, something's going to work. And as it happened, that individual introduced me into Microsoft, and I started consulting for them for years, and then into other places as well. So anyway, don't panic would be the advice, and yeah, you're going to figure it out.
Wow. You know, don't panic is easy to say, right? But it's really, really hard to to sustain it over especially when we first start, and that's why majority of startups die in the first 2 years, right? So
Yep.
the ability to be resilient and is very important, and luckily it's also fall into the category of what you've been doing, you've been training, and you've been learning
Right.
also. So
Right.
yeah. And uh, you know in our culture, it's the hardest thing is moving from 0 to 1. So from that,
Uh-huh.
and from 1 to 2 is easier. From 2 to 10 is easier, and then 10 to 100 become a lot easier. But then from 0 to 1 is always the hardest thing to do. So during that startup time, that and not panicking time. Tell us how you get from 0 to 1 to get that
Uh,
referral to Microsoft, though.
So there's no one path, and I want to echo what you say. So now a lot of people ask me, hey, I want to do what you're doing. How do I do it?
Yep.
Hey, and they want to give it a year. I'm like, if your mind is at a year to see if it'll work, you're not going to make it. My definition is if you don't have like a 3 year mindset that I'm going to do what it takes for 3 years, you may not be ready. Now, that's an opinion. I'm sure people just have other opinions, but you can't just go into something saying I'll figure it out in a year.
Oh.
It takes too long to build up clients, and repeat business is the main thing, and people who know you and refer you. So I'll echo that. And forgive me, your question was your question was
How did you move from 0 to 1 like that?
okay,
Yeah.
0 to 1. So it was the relationship. So some of those worked out well. Somebody introduced me to a state organization
Mm.
that was wanting some training, and I said, "Oh, great! I'm going to get my first contract." And it was like 2 months after. I was real excited. 3 days before they were start the contract, they pulled out,
Oh.
and so my next 3 or 4 months income disappeared like that.
Oh.
So I was stuck because you don't lose business and get business tomorrow in my business. You
Mm.
typically takes months or even years to get that. And so it was frightening, and I had to go to my parents for a loan. I'm like,
Mm.
I got hit. I thought I was going to make it, and so I went for a loan to get me through those first months. And then somebody who had been at Hewlett Packard had switched companies, and they called me up and said, "Hey, we're doing, we need some leadership development. Would you like to make a proposal?"
Mm.
And so I made that proposal, and that company hired me, and that program I wrote actually for them is still running all these years later. I
Wow.
started it then, and that other company is still using a version of that program. So that's kind of exciting to think, hey, I built something that continued on. But there was that relationship thing. Somebody knew you, somebody trusted you, and they called me up. In that case, it was out of the blue. I was not seeking them. I didn't have a great marketing plan, which I wish I did. I still wish I did. Uh, but colleagues who see your good work are, in my opinion, your best source of movement. And
Mm.
it's not like you're bugging them all the time, but they see your good work, and that is the way I got the one.
Mm.
And then that other person I told you about, he introduced me to Microsoft a few months later. And then somebody else introduced me somewhere else. It was all about somebody who knew me and introduced me.
Mm.
So that is how I got the one. And I just fully agree with you. When someone says, how do I get started? I said, get one client. That's all. Like if you want to be an executive coach, find one. If you want to, whatever it is, find one person, prove to yourself and to someone else that you can do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but the power of that first one. And sometimes that first one might even be, practice and free. I don't typically recommend people work for free, but if you don't have any of the credentials or experience or reputation, sometimes you just need to get out there and try some things till you get a reputation.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing that, Dave. I have a guest joining our show, and he's teaching at Harvard, and he said that before he wanted to become an executive coach, he didn't have he also have a PhD in organizational psychology, and he really want to be an executive coach for one of the best coach in the world, right? So he contacted the person and offered for 2 years free of work supporting and stuff, so to learn from that, and that individual, and he said that offer free service, and then the person see the sincerity in there, and along the way they create the business of executive coaching together for him, and now he's one of he's really well known, well, and high sought on executive coach for the C-suite level around the world. And thanks for bringing that insights and share to us today. All right.
Right. And continuing that on, to me, once you have that, be very careful about giving away value. If you have a value, it's established value, then I say don't give it away. There will be a lot of people who ask you to do things for free, and I think it's more you driving it than others, because there's a great saying that is, the more you do things for free, the more opportunities you get to do things for free. And that's not a good business model in the long term. Initially, are there places? Yes. But as a business person, be very careful that everything's going to turn to money if I just get in there. There are those cases, but in my biased opinion, it's something to do earlier rather than later.
Dave, when you talk about your friends refer businesses to you, right? And relationship is very important. That curious to me because a lot of people also do a really good job at what they do, but nobody refer the business for them. So and how did you make great out of the relationship that you have, so that when they left the organization they refer your business to the next employer they work, or they transfer that message to the market on your behalf?
I wish I could say I did X or Y. I don't know that I intentionally did anything back then. I'm more intentional now, but the main thing was, you do excellent work and keep connected. At that time, I was not as assertive maybe as I am now. Nowadays, like if you and I had worked together, I might say after our interaction, hey, do you know one or two people that you could introduce me to? All right. Yep. So now I would be a little bit more proactive. I probably should have been proactive earlier in my career, but just the willingness. In fact, part of this, I was coaching a very top-notch salesperson, and the kind of guy that does $1 million deals. All right, and we were coaching on something other than sales. But I said, hey, let's reverse this. I want you to be my coach for a second here. I go, what makes you good? And he, in one sentence, he summed it up. I ask for what I want. And that phrase has really hit me. Ask for what you want. If you want business, ask for business. If you want, X fee, ask for that fee. You've got to learn to ask for what you want. I think it's really easy to just kind of hold back. So ask for what you want.
And ask for what we want seems to be again easy to say, but it's really hard for a lot of people, because we feel awkward when we ask for something. It makes us feel like we are baby, asking and keep asking, right? So And I also a big fan of ask what we want. Otherwise, if I don't ask, yeah, you, Dave, this conversation's not gonna happen. So how can we help
Right.
people to be more comfortable and be mindful, but be courageous enough to ask for what they want, though?
And because what you've done in the last year of all the people that you've had on this show, I
Yep.
mean, you're what you've done is a great example of that. And I think, and you can add to this with your own experiences, once you do it once or twice, you go, that really wasn't that bad.
Mm.
I mean, it's like if somebody says no, it's not like they hate you. It's just like, oh, I don't have somebody to refer you to or whatever.
Mm.
And I'm asking a client who's had a positive experience with me. They are I kind of categorize them as fans. They believe in me. They like what I did for their company. So why is it bad to ask them for something they want to help? And in fact, as I've been asking lately, I'm often surprised at how willing and how fast they are to help.
Mm.
Um, and so it's just you start doing it a little, and you're like, oh. And I'll tell you, it's for me, it's been an ego boost even now. Of you ask people, and they're like, oh yeah, I think a lot of people could benefit from what you've done. And you're like, oh yeah, it's just great to have fans, and so just it is just starting. I would assume that's what you did. If I could reverse the interviewer role here for a second, how did you do it? Didn't you just start asking?
Yep. I just started asking. I asked one, because every person that we met to, we have somebody in their networks that, that we have great stories. And I asked, like, like, hi, Dave, is there anybody that you know of will be, willing to join the program and share like you do? And that's it. And
That's it.
yeah, and then 9 out of 10, they will have names. They even, some people even have to connect us through email, make the first introductions,
Right,
and that's I think that at the heart of our human beings, we want to be helpful. So we want to be, add
right.
values to one another, and that's it.
Yeah, if I could, kind of give some advice, is it's not asking just for a referral; it's asking for an introduction.
Mm.
So, like, if you ask someone and you say, "Hey, is there someone you could refer me to?" They'll give you a name, and then you're calling them, and it's really a cold call.
Mm.
Versus if you say, could you introduce me to so and so? Now then they do that, dual email that says, hey Dave, meet, so and so. Anytime you can get the person to make an introduction,
Mm.
perfect world. Anytime they can make a phone call, all right. And so ask for the introduction, not just the referral.
Absolutely. Ask for the introduction, not ask for the referral yet, right? uh,
Yeah.
Dave, you've been in this like change management, the leadership development space for 30 years, right? And you're still full of energy in this field. So what did this field give you? What great lesson did the industry give you over the years, though?
So, one, just kind of generally, is just there are so many good people who want to do the right thing.
Mm.
Doesn't mean they're perfect. So, like, part of this is the people you interact with, and I mainly interact with leaders, they care. And I know there are some leaders who are not perfect, but even the not perfect ones generally care. And I'm going to ignore the extreme folks that, maybe make the news, but I have just found most people are decent,
Mm.
and being around those kind of people, hearing their interest in doing what's right. So that is one thing that I've learned, is that there are so many good people, and so many ways and so many personalities that can succeed.
Mm.
There's not like one right way to be a leader.
Mm.
There's quiet leaders, there's boisterous leaders, and everything in between. So there's not a right way. And the other part really comes from, the research that I mentioned is that the research showed me that really what you need is learnable.
Mm.
And that's my whole research area is how you go from one level to the next.
Mm.
And I am absolutely convinced, and this is a message I want to get out to everyone, is your brain can absolutely rewire and you can learn the skills you need to learn.
Mm.
The brain science shows it. And to me, that's just exciting. And as I've gone around, sharing the work, we call it the pit of success, all
Mm.
right? As I share this idea of the pit of success of how you go in and learn things beyond your experience, it's just rewarding. And people can step up from one level to the next. A lot of times when you're given that next either position or scale, that the scope of your work has expanded, you may wonder if you're good enough.
Mm.
And what I find is that people have what it takes to figure things out if
Mm.
they're willing to figure it out.
Mm.
Your brain can rewire, and this is where I get really on my soapbox. What you need is learnable. I want people to understand that all the way down in their soul, that you have a brain that can let go of the good things it's learned and learn something new and do that over and over again. The research shows it. You can do this into your 80s, into your 90s, into 100. I look at research of people who've learned to read in different languages when they're in their 90s or even 100.
Mm.
Okay, your abilities to keep on learning are amazing. And so what have I learned? I've learned amazing people, most care, and what you need is learnable. I'm so excited about that idea.
We're gonna go back to the book that you write and the research you done on the pit of success at a later time, all right? And allow us to
Okay.
continue with the journey that you've been doing, because like you say, you've been working with so many different kind of leaders who have very good intention to make the change in the world, in the works that they do, right? And over the years, how did you help yourself to build a body of works that you are able to work with every type of leaders, every type of person that you got interaction with?
So you're asking, I'm not sure I understand your question. How did I learn to work with them, or
Yeah,
how did
yes.
I
How?
start?
Because normally with our personality, we will fit well with one group of people. But then because you're a lot of works,
Mhm.
you're gonna work with different kind of people, different type of
Right.
organizations, right? So you have to be able to build a body of works that you be able to work with almost everybody. So how can you make
Okay.
that happen for yourself?
So for me, it's really about an interest and belief in people. I fundamentally believe in the people I work with, that they
Mm.
can grow, that even though there's imperfections, that they can work. So I believe in them.
Mm.
And I think people feel that when they're with me, they know that what I care about is their success.
Mm.
And so they can be very different from me. They can be a different age, older, younger. Uh, they, in any kind of different languages,
Mm.
but they can feel that I believe in them.
Ah.
And so with a basic belief in people and a curiosity of why is that important to you, I just like if you and I have strong differences on something, I could fall into this, well, I don't like you. But
Mm.
instead of that, I try and go into what can I learn about you?
Mm.
So if I focus on learning about you and I know more about you, it's pretty hard to dislike you. There are rare exceptions, but the more I'm willing to learn about you, the more I can go, oh, I can see where they're coming from. So that belief in others and a desire to help them succeed and a desire to let them be them
Mm.
rather than to mold anybody after me or anybody else allows me to just be present and care.
I see. Thanks for sharing that, Dave. Now it's time for us to move into the book, and I want to congratulate you for the success of the book. And earlier I say that the executive friends, right? They regret if they did not start their own company and when they were younger. The second regret
Yes.
is they always wanted to write a book and sharing the people about the journey, the works, the experience, whatever that they want to share to the world, and they yet doing that. So I always encourage them to start writing when they. It's never late. So we want to talk about the pit of success. And tell us how what leads you to write that book though.
So it's actually based on my research that I did in my doctorate. I did research on change resilience, and I started teaching about it, using it in org changes, using it to develop leaders, and uh, people kept on saying, "Dave, where's the book? Where's the book?"
Yeah.
And so finally, after years of teaching about it, I got the book written. I actually wrote another book about 10 years ago on the topic, but I wrote it as a parable. And so it was more the story version of it.
Mm.
And this is more the, I don't know, what do you call it, the direct version, as the research and, the models and all that. Yeah, so one, let me back up to on the writing. I really just agree with that of the best way to start writing is to start writing. All right.
Mm.
I started writing articles, for like no name publications. I wrote articles, little things, 1-pagers, 2-pagers, and just it was practice because you don't learn to write well until you write a lot.
Mm.
It is writing a lot. And so, like in creating our book, so I argue I wrote 5 or 10 books to write this one book because I wrote a chapter, I put it out for feedback, I rewrote it, I put it out for feedback, I rewrote it and rewrote it. Every chapter was bad when I wrote it.
Mm.
Every one. But in order to write, you have to write a bad chapter to write a good chapter.
Mm.
And that's what stops most people from writing is they're like, well, I don't want to put it out. I don't want to get the criticism. I don't want to feel bad. The one thing I've learned from writing a lot is get it out. Be told it's awful. Yeah, I want to hear that early. I don't want to hear that when I published it. I want to hear that way before I published it. So for everybody who's an aspiring author, just start writing. And now with like LinkedIn, you can do a 1-page article every week if you want.
Yep.
And get feedback. And so, previously there were all these blocks to writing. Now then you do not have to wait to have an audience.
Mm.
It's there. And the distribution channel is at everyone's fingertips. So I would push that. So anyways, that's for all the writers. Yes, start writing. And as far as the book, it came out of my PhD research. We were using it in organizational change. And it's really something that helps people see that, what they need is within their reach. And so let me tell you about what the pit of success is.
Okay.
And fortunately, because like it's a weird name, right? Pit of success. What in the world is it? All right. So every one of us right now has some current level of expertise. You're operating right at this level. You've done a lot to be that good, and it's cool.
Mm.
However, there's something over here at this level that you need to get to. And you might think, I just want to climb over there. I want to get there and whatever. But the reality between these two spaces, this lower space and higher space, is a pit. There is a drop. And so the reason most of us become afraid is we start moving towards this new version and we find that we fall down rather than go up. And so we begin to go, what's the matter with me? I thought I was better. Shouldn't I have this by now? In that space, what's the most logical thing to do? The most logical thing to do is to go back to do what you know how to do. And there's like sometimes people will say, well, you're just going back to your comfort zone. Maybe, but my brain is wired to do these things. to doing what I know how to do. And so to get to the new level, I have to rewire. And the space between is intimidating. What I want everybody to know is that I've interviewed CEOs, I've interviewed surgeons, politicians, school, like the PTA, school presidents. I've interviewed people at all over, and everybody I talk to tells me the same story. When they are between these two areas, their current expertise and their future expertise, they wonder if they're good enough. Everyone. It's not just you. It's like everybody around you. Those people that you look at and you think, oh, they're so confident. They wonder if they're enough. I can guarantee it. Everybody is trying to figure it out. And once you realize that the doubts you feel between these two spaces in the pit, they're not a sign of your incompetence. They're a sign that you're leaving your familiar and rewiring your brain. And you're not supposed to know. You're supposed to be confused. Once you realize that, you're free. And that's the power of the pit of success, is to say, you mean this between space where I wonder if I'm an idiot is normal? Yes, you're normal, and you will figure it out. You have a brain that can rewire. So
wow.
There's a little bit.
But what happened to all of us if we have that, like that, like feelings, of not, not competent. If we want to move from here to here, though.
So how do you deal with not feeling
what
enough?
happened to us? Why do we feel that way?
Well, we're doing something we don't know how to do, and so it's logical to be lost. I mean, let's think about playing an instrument. If I start playing an instrument, do I feel competent when I first start? No. Why? I've never done it before. And so it's real easy to start going, oh, I'm not any good at this. It's just normal to do that. And we are good at something over here, so we naturally go back to it. I joke that, in the musician world, many people like who play guitar or piano, they'll have a favorite song, right? And they'll play it all the time. And if you go to their house or they're at a party, they always play that same old song. They don't learn a whole bunch more. And part of the reason is whenever they get out the new music, they're looking at the music, they try for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, it hurts to do the new work. It's hard. And so what's the most natural thing to do? Play the song you already know. And so let's play that into life, not just music. So you're trying to learn to be a new leader. You're trying to learn to run a team. You're trying to start your own company. You go into the pit and you wonder, why aren't you enough? It's logical. There's nothing wrong with those doubts. Doubts tell us that we need to work. The question becomes, am I willing to work? All right?
Yep.
Because we all have to be going, all right, I don't know. Some of the things, I think you've probably heard of the growth mindset.
Yep.
And great idea. And I think what, I'm blanking on the author's name right now, but I think what she's done that is amazing is she has a phrase called yet, or not yet. And when we are in a place where we're sitting there and we're doing things that are hard for us, if we can simply say the word, I'm not there yet, we actually have an advantage. Because what does that say? I will get there. Versus if you're in the pit and you say, what's the matter with me? Then you're discouraged from action. So moving through those doubts, one aspect is yet. Another one is reconnecting to your purpose. Why do you want to go over there? Think about the why, and that can help generate too. So those are a couple of things to help you get through. And one, knowing it's normal, it's like, oh, you mean there's not anything the matter with me? Nope, it's just the process. And literally, like I talked to the head of surgery at a med school. He says he gives his surgeons the same speech about learning. He's like, exact same thing. I try and tell them that even though they're trained as surgeons, they're going to have doubts and that you're going to figure it out. And it doesn't matter your intellect, your background. It's just normal to wonder if you're good enough.
Mm. In the book, if you pick one chapter that you like most, and I bet that you like every chapter is in there, right? But if you pick one chapter that you really, really like and you want to share with us, what would that chapter be and why?
Well, yeah, I'm biased. There's a whole lot more than one that's good, but I really just shared chapter one with you.
Okay.
That was explaining the pit. But what I'm also excited about is chapter two, is that we go into the brain research and we basically show you without a shadow of a doubt that you cannot read that chapter and go, I can't do it. We show you how MRIs, how when people do certain things, how the brain changes, how they've measured that under MRIs.
Mm.
We show you that number of repetitions and how you can gain things based on the number of repetitions. When you read that and you understand that your brain can rewire, you're at a whole new level of freedom. Because
Mm.
like a lot of times you sit there and you wonder, well, maybe they're just better than me. And I argue they may have some advantage, but your brain can rewire just like theirs. And knowing that your brain can rewire, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful things you can know. Because
Mm.
you can no longer say, I can't do this.
Mm.
You can say, I'm not willing to practice. I'm not willing to pay the price.
Mm.
But when you understand the brain research, you've got freedom
Mm.
because nothing is beyond you. You,
Mm.
you, you have you have what it takes. The question is, do you want to practice? Do you want to get feedback? Do you want to be lost and confused? Because your better future depends on your willingness to be temporarily lost and confused.
Absolutely. And thanks for doing that because in our backbones we always want to create something better for our community, our society, our world, in our ways, right? And if we can pass the limiting belief, if we can overcome that, if we can, and be a better self, definitely we will create better family, better home, better environment, anything. So thanks for writing the book, helping people to be like to understand the pit and how they can leverage that and rewire their brain and help themselves to be able to go into the next level in their life, Dave. All right, I have I have two other questions before we end the conversation today, and it's also all about you. Your works involve you to do a lot of thinking, Dave. All right, you meet a lot of people who are also great thinkers. So my wife and I, we've been in the quest to help people to improve their ability to think because we believe that our ability to think these days are diminishing, not increasing at all. And every chance that we meet people like you, we will ask this question: how have they been able to help yourself to expand your ability to think?
So I constantly collect articles. So
Mm,
every day I read articles on various topics that I care about. I have, you know, 10 topics I care about.
mm,
And I'll read those and save them. And so I have a file for various topics that are interesting to me on change, on leadership, on resilience. And I'm just always adding to it.
mm,
And uh, and so that's one is find topics you care about and read several things on them. You just got to read. And it could be books, could be articles. So that's number one. Number two, to think, you have to, I believe, you need to write.
mm,
So many times when people, in fact, want to write a book, it's to help them think. One of the best things that comes out of writing a book is you have to think and organize. If you read an article, you have a good idea. If I read 5 articles and then I need to make them work together, I'm now processing and thinking. And and then I can come up with something coherent. If
mm,
I've only read it, I may be able to have an interesting tidbit, but I don't have a working model to share.
mm,
So read more and write more would be my first two.
mm,
And then the other is to share your ideas
mm.
and get feedback from people. It's like, I'm thinking this, and you know, what's your thoughts on that? And by the same token, asking people, what do you think about that? Reading, writing, and talking more to people and truly being interested.
Wow. Thanks a lot for sharing that. You know, Dave, when we try to, my wife and I are working on, and when we try to ask so many people about their ability, what helped them to think better, right? We start to see the patterns. And then we put it down to the acronym for thinking, and then, like the THINKING, right? And the last word G in there was very profound to us when we do the research is related to generosity, and like you mentioned, the third thing that you do, sharing. So sharing ideas, sharing and contribute to the ideas of other people actually help us to grow and think a lot deeper, a lot bigger. And we I ran a poll on our my LinkedIn the other day, and we had over 1,000 votes, and people vote that, and 80% of them saying it's a yes, correlation between generosity and its effects on our ability to think. So it's amazing. We're gonna explore into that further. Thanks for sharing that one, like the third point that you do
Yeah.
today. I'll ask you the last questions, and it's also about the works that you do. So uh, we knew your past, that you did not know what you want to do in the future, so you tried to do everything. You got into the financial planning and found your love in training and developing others, and went further to learn your PhD on organizational development, but in the specific sports psychology, right? And then got out, worked for companies to gain experience, then have your own company. Bravo you for that, and wrote two books now. And we want to head on to a future a little bit, Dave. Is there anything that you're working on that excites you, and you want to share with me and the audience so we can celebrate with you in advance?
One, I'm really trying to get the message out on the pit of success because it has had such impact. I'm just looking for ways to get that message out and help people do it. Number two, I'm always working on another book, and
Ah,
it's a book on how you show up. And so,
wow.
what are the ways you show up? How do you show up to create connection with people rather than create distance? Because everything you do is you showing up.
Yep.
And so, something we've been doing in organizations, and now I'm looking to create that.
That's wonderful thing you share, because earlier I asked you the secrets of what you do, so the people do the referral for you, right? It's really because of your personality, the works that you do, and how you show up to this world, how you show up to them, that make you likable, that make you that make them feel willingly to
Right,
support. So please write
right.
that book.
Well,
Please share that. Yes.
and and to me, it's not just about being likable, although that doesn't hurt, but it's about results in the business. All right. And so, like I always say, if I go somewhere and people say, "Isn't Dave great?" I have failed, because I don't want to walk away with them thinking about me. I want to walk away and then say they themselves are great.
Hmm.
They want to know that they're more empowered, they're more capable, because the more they become aware of their capabilities, the more I have been a success.
Wonderful, wonderful. It is a great honor to having you in our network, and thanks a lot. I'm grateful for you
My
to spend
pleasure.
your time joining our program and sharing your amazing stories and insights. I look forward to a chance for us to meet, either if I'm traveling to America next year, or if you'd ever travel to Vietnam, then I would love to have a cup
It'd
of
be a
coffee
pleasure.
together. All right.
Yes, I would look forward to that.
Alrighty. Thanks for joining the show, and I look forward to meeting you. For the time being, I need to say goodbye to you, and I wish you all the best, all the resources that you need,
Okay.
so that you can continue create greatness around. Okay,
Thank you so much. Been a pleasure.
it's just a pleasure for me too. Bye bye for now.
All right. Take care.
Bye,
Thank
Dave.
you.
Thank you, my friend.
Bye.
Bye.